Hello and welcome back to HEMAFightBreakdowns. Today I'm going to be going over the team longsword matches from AGO a couple weekends ago. Now, if you don't know what a team longsword match is, basically instead of a 1 versus 1 match where two people are trying to get to a certain number of points to win, it is 3v3 where two teams of three are competing to get enough points to win the match. In this case, that number is 15. The reason the number is 15 is because rather than it being one person, again, fighting each other, there are going to be a set of three 1v1s. So the way it works is that each team is set up so that the person with the lowest HEMA rating goes first, the second lowest goes second, and the highest goes third. And each of those individual people has 5 of their team's 15 lives. 5 lives a person, 3 people, 15 lives. And the idea is that when you go and you fight, if you get 5 points scored against you, you're out, and the next person in line replaces you. And what that means is that in order to finish the fight, you have to go through all 3 of the people on the opposing team. So this is kind of fun and exciting because it allows people who are from their own club to kind of band together and form fun teams and fight together and cheer for each other. But also, it means you get some very interesting fights that you don't normally get between people in separate divisions who would never really actually face each other. In this particular case, this gold medal match is between my team, which was a pickup team of people who didn't have a club, and Buck's historical Team A, which comprised of Stevie Parker, Jeff Wills, and Stephen Cheney. And as you can probably tell, that team ended up winning. But we're going to watch these fights and break down a couple of the exchanges. Obviously, I can't do them all because there's a ton of them. But I can show off some pretty nice longsword fencing. So for our first matchup, we have Chris Yang versus Stevie Parker. And both of these people are really good longsword fencers and two people who I believe had fenced earlier in this day in the pools. So they were already pretty well acquainted with how the other person fenced. But as you see from this first exchange, they both come in and they both hit each other in the head. But what's worth pointing out here is that the rules of Team Relay were a little bit different than the longsword from previously. The basic gist of it is that whatever you hit, you got the points for. All after blows were counted and all doubles were counted, and they were fully weighted, which means that in this particular case, where they both hit each other in the head, they both got 2 points, which you also might remember means that they're already almost halfway to being out and getting swapped in by the next person. One of the other really cool exchanges that these two had later on in the fight was this one. So we're looking at these two being a little bit more tactical because previously they were both trying to fish for that initial attack. And what we see here is Chris come in with a very high and very flat angle middle how cut. And what it does is it gives him a really nice bind from the kinds of attacks that Stevie had been throwing previously, which were direct attacks where her long edge was just going straight towards Chris's head. It managed to parry her out of the way and slip in over the top, and it looks like bonk her on the head a little bit and make some nice, decent contact, at which point Stevie pulls off, throws a cut underneath, which gets in under the armpit of Chris, which he wraps up. Now, obviously, in this particular case, with afterblows always counting, Chris got 2 points and Stevie got 1, but it was a marked shift in how the fight was going up until this point because it put Chris within killing distance of Stevie to get on to the next fighter, and Stevie, who is still hanging on, is showing that she's never really going to give up anything for free. Coming immediately after that last exchange, Stevie makes a very nice adaptation here, throwing a baited thrust on the offside to get Chris to parry, at which point she comes back all the way around, throws a body cut, and then covers the opening with the classic back parry technique. Luckily, she wasn't flagged for turning the back of her head, though I really think that this was a almost perfect execution of this play, and she gets another crucial set of points here that's getting them ever closer to swapping out the fighter. Now, this next exchange is the last one between these two, and it's a return to form of the beginning, where both are fishing for that initial action, and both are very, very good at throwing it. Stevie throws another baited thrust, which Chris does bite on, but bites on it in a very particular way, throwing a long-distance shield how with a passing step, with the edge straight down, that does appear to come straight down on top of Stevie's shoulder, at which point Stevie attempts to push the arms up and throw a little afterblow hand cut. However, the judges ruled that Chris's initial shield how was flat to the side of the head rather than down onto the shoulder. And looking at the replay, you can kind of see what they were talking about. The overall motion of the blade was going more to the side than it was down, and as a result kind of got caught up in Stevie's helmet about halfway between it and the shoulder, which gave it the appearance that it didn't, put its edge down. Though, in my opinion, it did look like it was a pretty solid execution of an edge down shield. How this is something that maybe you really only get to see when you're watching it in slow motion. Either way, though, Chris's attack was thrown out. Stevie got the last points needed to throw him out of the fight, and now in comes me. So, for the one and unfortunately only exchange that I get against Stevie, what happens is I'm coming in with my patented new right leg back guard, which definitely nobody else does. And Stevie does a really great job of clearing out her upper openings and going for her patented initial attacks. She feigns up high on her left side, pulls back, and then comes in on her right side with a just descending cut straight to my head. But she pulls back and reasserts her lines so quickly and so decisively that despite the fact that I read that she has pulled her initial attack and start immediately throwing my left Zverkow, I am still unable to hit her first and then cleanly cover myself before that second one comes in. Not only that, but it seems like Stevie was able to ascertain that I was throwing a left Zverkow out of this position and angled her second descending cut from her right side such that it would go straight down the length of my blade towards my head and not interact with my crossguard. So the overall interpretation is that we doubled pretty hard, but lucky for her, because of the additive after blows, she hit me in the head and I only hit her in the top of the shoulder from the side and didn't defend myself. So she got 2 points, I got 1 point. My 1 point was enough to switch her to the next fighter, but now I'm going into a fight with Jeff Wills at a 1 point deficit. So for my first exchange with Jeff, we of course have to start off by squaring off with each other because I want to make it clear that I want revenge for Jeff knocking me out of the bracket the previous day. But for what it's worth, we both fence in a pretty similar manner. We're both defensive, we're both very technical, we both love the parry riposte. And in this particular instance, I am the one who gets away with it. Jeff comes in with a really nice initial attack that just barely doesn't quite make it far enough to just skim the front of my jacket. I parry him off to the side, I throw my left Zverkow. He maybe overcommitted just a little bit with his step forward, which allows me to get all the way around, hit him in the side of the head, and then come back and parry afterwards. A really nice, clean exchange between the two of us, and now I have made up that 1 point deficit and given myself a 1 point lead. So I actually skipped an exchange here because we both doubled each other in the head and it's ugly and nobody wants to see it. But for this next exchange, what you have to know going in is that we're both within striking range of getting the other person out. And for this exchange, Jeff makes a slight mistake in that he goes for a low target. He tries to sink his body down and cut me in either the leg or the body, hoping that my next thrust would miss over the top. And he was actually almost right. I throw my Shielhao in, and I barely manage to stick it into the top of his right shoulder while he goes down for that strike. And what it essentially means is that I was probably about 1 inch away from skittering over the top and completely missing, but at the exact same time, I suck in my gut when I throw my Shielhao, and Jeff was about 1 inch away from also missing his cut across the body. Both end up counting, I get 2 points, he gets 1, and unfortunately, we both have to swap out. So now I'm done fighting, and so is Jeff, but it comes down to another exciting match, which is Chandler Brown versus Stephen Chaney. So for our opening exchange in a fight against Stephen Chaney does exactly what Stephen Chaney does best. He walks directly into range and throws a single attack action straight down from the top, from the right side to the top of the head of Chandler, which hits him clean. At which point Chandler, who had attempted to parry it, tries to kind of wind his blade over to drop the short edge, but finds that he's just way too close and can't really get it turned around in time. So a clean shot from Stephen for the first exchange. Now, this next exchange is a pretty frantic one and a pretty exciting one. We see Chandler come forward with a feinted Shielhao, which Stephen Chaney goes out of the way to parry, at which point Chandler goes into a cron and executes a left Zverkow that whirls all the way around. However, despite the fact that he was coming forward very quickly, Chaney is doing a great job of maintaining that same distance while going backwards. And as a result, Chandler is only able to what looks like clip the top of Chaney's arm. At the exact same time as this is happening, Chaney, who probably thought that he was going backwards even a little bit faster, threw a swiping cut across the middle, which does appear to graze the chest of Chandler. After this kind of trade of blows happens, Cheney comes back very quickly to reassert his point and plant it directly into Chandler's face, while simultaneously zoning out the opposite side, which Chandler was already attempting to attack. Now, when we went to the judges on this, they basically said it was a double deep, which is strange to me because, at least as far as I can tell, the only actual headshot that happened was Cheney stabbing Chandler in the head, but more or less after everything was going on. Either way, though, I would still probably call this a double, just two shallow targets, not necessarily deep ones. But it does make things pretty exciting because now Chandler's on the board, although Stephen Cheney is within striking distance of ending the entire match. So this is going to be the final exchange between these two, and of course, the final exchange between the two teams. And it is a pretty exciting one. Stephen Cheney comes in and throws his classic descending cut straight to the top of the head. However, Chandler has made an adaptation in order to parry this effectively. Where normally this shot is designed to go over Kron parries, Chandler sinks his hips and sinks his legs and gets his cross completely over the top of his own head, which is what allows him to parry it. Immediately upon feeling contact, he begins his left Zverk, which you hear land and even see land into the body of Stephen Cheney. However, at the exact same time that this is happening, Stephen Cheney is doing his classic hand push, something that I described in a previous video. Basically, he shoves his hands into your hands to make sure that he can stuff this exact counterattack. It's very, very hard to throw a proper Zverkout if your hands are being shoved into your own face, because you need the forward momentum of the arm and of the shoulder in order to effectively deliver any kind of cut, Zverkouts included. After Cheney does the hand push and Chandler manages to land his Zverkout to the body, Chandler falls over. Now, according to the rules of this tournament, you can't really score while going to the ground. And what that means is, despite the fact that Chandler probably got a good amount of bite on that Zverkow, the fact that he was able to be pushed over immediately after means that he didn't really have a great stable footing when he threw it. And because this tournament did allow throws, Stephen Cheney actually gets 2 points for pushing him to the ground without falling over himself, and thus winning the match. You might be able to go back and see now with, 2020 hindsight 4K vision that Zverkow was good enough and it did land before Chandler fell over. But I can definitely understand the ruling that says anybody who falls over immediately during or after their technique, maybe shouldn't be given credit. And obviously, Chandler, if he had simply kept his hips maybe just the slightest bit higher or had been moving his head a little bit further forward when he threw this, might have been able to stay standing while he had delivered the strike and certainly would have won the match. So it was really close and really tight either way, and it was a really fun match. But if you want to see me cover other team relay longsword matches, I have the bronze medal match and I can do it later, but only if people really seem to like it. Other than that, I will see you on Thursday.